Good morning, happy Tuesday, and welcome back. Today I want to take just a couple quick minutes to walk you through a really excellent sample of a student response to the sample essay that I posted on Google Classroom yesterday. And at this point, you might actually want to pause and go to Google Classroom and open up that assignment for argument essay number 1 so that you can follow along with the prompt, because I'm not going to put it in this video right now. Once you have that, let's just walk through this essay and see how this author has managed to earn all 7 points in a really efficient essay that I think took them probably less than 25 minutes to write, leaving some time for editing and fact-checking and all that. This author begins, one thing I want to point out about this essay actually is that the structure makes it really easy to read. There are no formal points for structure or for style or for beauty or for grammar in the rubric for the AP Comp Gov argument essay, but your reader is going to be this harassed teacher who is sitting at home in front of their laptop for like 8 to 10 hours a day, trying to grade a million of these things in 4 or 5 days. They're not going to be super happy about that situation because they don't get to hang out at the nerd convention that is the AP exam reading every year. And they're probably going to be trying to get through these things as fast as possible. The reader's instructions are always to get through, to find as many opportunities as they can to give you points, but you're more likely to get those points if you structure your essay in a way that makes it really easy for your reader to figure out what's going on. And so the first thing I want to highlight about this sample essay is that it's structured in a way that just makes it crystal clear to me as a reader what's happening in each sentence, right? So this author has started with a 2-sentence thesis at the beginning in its own paragraph. They've used the words from the prompt in order to clue me into the fact that they're addressing the prompt, that they're making a very clear claim, et cetera, et cetera. And then they've separated out their 2 different pieces of evidence into 2 separate paragraphs so that I can understand when they're transitioning from example number 1 to reasoning number 1 to evidence number 2 to reasoning number 2. So that's the first thing I want to highlight, is this structure just makes it a little bit easier for your reader to immediately figure out what's going on. And it makes it easier for you to know, to go back and check whether you've done all of the things that you need to do in order to maximize your score. So let's dive into the actual words. This first paragraph gives us a 2-sentence thesis reading. It is not necessary for governments to regulate formal political participation. Pause right there. This person has already made a defensible claim in response to the prompt. So they're 2 out of 3 tick boxes away from getting that full thesis point. And then they go on to say, because regulation prevents the formation of civil society organizations that create a stronger democratic state. That right there, I think, is all that they need to do in order to get the thesis point. But they're actually going to go on and strengthen the reasoning in a way that I find really compelling, and in a way that I think structures the rest of the essay and foregrounds the rest of their argument really nicely by saying, civil society creates a space for citizens to voice their opinions on the government and take advantage of civil liberties such as freedom of speech and assembly to protest or voice their concerns. So now we're talking about why it is that civil society and civil liberties are a good thing even from a government's perspective. So I'm going to pause right here and just make a little comment for myself, noting that this author has gotten 1 out of 1 points for the thesis statement. Now we're going to jump down to the second paragraph, where this author has turned to Nigeria as an example of a place where civil society is active, restrictions on political participation are very minimal, and good things are happening as a result. They're going to introduce it with a topic sentence, which is not required here, but which is, again, a really good way of setting both your reader and yourself up to know what's going on in this paragraph, where they say, in Nigeria, civil society is very active, citizens are able to exercise their right to protest. And now this author is going to get a little bit more specific about the precise kinds of civil society organizations that have formed in Nigeria in order to prove their point that civil society is pretty much unrestricted. There are many interest groups, most that have formed within the past 20 years, that unify members of specific groups to accomplish a certain goal or express their discontent with the government. For example, MOSOP and MEND are 2 civil society groups in the Niger Delta that claim to act on the behalf of the citizens of the Niger Delta. So now what we've seen is a concrete example of political participation in Nigeria. So already we've got 1 point for this piece of evidence because it's addressing the prompt and it's related to a case study country and it's accurate. And we're going to give this evidence a second point. We're going to give this piece of evidence a second point because it's related to civil society, which is one of the 3 concepts specified in the prompt. So I'm going to go ahead and give this piece of evidence, we're going to call it evidence number 1 because it's the first piece of evidence, 2 points out of 2. It's about Nigeria. and it's about civil society. So far, so good. And then this author is going to go on and provide pretty explicit, clear reasoning. While they commonly use violence to achieve their goals, it's a little qualification showing some subtlety in the argument. These organizations represent the freedom that exists in Nigeria to express opposition to the actions of the government. So here we're implicitly talking about the concept of civil liberties as well. While there are some restrictions, for the most part, civil society is not highly regulated in Nigeria, allowing organizations to form and protest the government, holding them accountable and increasing transparency. And so now this author has made that explicit connection between allowing citizens the right to politically participate through participation in civil society, and then good results from the government in terms of accountability and transparency. So we're going to go ahead and give this 1 point out of 1 for reasoning statement number 1. Okay, lather, rinse, repeat for the second paragraph. And again, separating out that second paragraph just makes it crystal clear to me as a reader where the second example is beginning, which this author also signals by saying contrarily and by shifting to a very different case to the country. Contrarily, in Russia, civil society is extremely highly restricted, and public protests are extremely rare. When they do occur, they are usually broken up by police, and many activists are arrested, such as Alexei Navalny. He's a very strong opposition figure to Putin and a political activist. In response, he was arrested for planning an unauthorized protest. Here we've gone again into a specific concrete example, and I know that this is specific and factual, and this author really knows what they're talking about because they've actually gone ahead and name-checked Alexei Navalny. They can cite a particular protest that's been repressed by the Russian government. That, again, is going to be related to civil society and or civil liberties. This author could have been covered their butt a little bit more by using one of those terms explicitly, but I think it covers their basis adequately. So we're going to go ahead and give that our 2 more points for the piece of evidence number 2, because it's related to Russia and it's related to civil society and civil liberties. And finally, we will conclude by doing this explicit analysis. This allowed Putin to maintain control and ensure that his opposition was unable to beat him, because once someone is arrested in Russia, they are no longer able to run for office. And this author is pointing out that Navalny was explicitly disqualified from challenging Putin from the presidency on the grounds of an old embezzlement conviction. This enables Putin to maintain control and continue his authoritarian rule. Right? And that last phrase is connecting us back to the very first sentence in the thesis, where this author is saying we have to have fewer restrictions on political participation if we want to create a democratic state. Right? So this is going to get the final point for reasoning number 2. Lots of good ways to do this type of argument essay. I've seen some pretty strong samples using a wide range of evidence and using a variety of structures, but I wanted to walk you through this essay because I think it's just a really straightforward, clearly structured, clearly argued example of exactly what I want you to do when you are doing the argument essay on Friday, May 22nd, 2020. Thanks. That's all.